I'm Debra Beck-Mewing from the Property Frontline.
I'm John Gilmovich from Real Property Manager.
And I'm Ken from Avvora Finance. So you're with Property Mythbusters today, and in this session, we're here to bust myths around misleading information in the property space, with the specific topic being you can't buy property without seeing it. So straight off the bat, I guess I'll start quickly in terms of this topic. Being a mortgage broker, I personally don't see every property that my clients buy, and I have had clients purchase property without actually seeing the property firsthand, especially if they're going through a buyer's agent. So one thing that I've mentioned is that banks do valuations via desktop or remotely these days. It's a standard practice for properties that they deem that are standard. So anything that's unique about the property or the location, maybe they may send someone out to physically inspect the property to get an idea on what the value may be, especially if it's unique, or maybe if there hasn't been too many sales in the area. There are certain criteria that the banks use or the valuers use to kind of determine the value. And so that's something to keep in the back of your mind in terms of buying property without seeing it. No doubt if there's any concerns, usually a solicitor or even the bank might pull that up through the valuation. John, did you have 2 cents on it?
Yeah, so look, as a licensed real estate agent, what I'll cover is, I guess, a little bit on the selling, a little bit on the rental and leasing front. But the legislation is very clear in the Property Stock Business Agents Act, which governs real estate agents, that firstly, when they're actually doing appraisals, so this is on the selling side, when they're actually out there doing an appraisals or are called in to do an appraisal of a property, that an actual physical inspection of the property has to be done. So on the appraisal valuation front, there's no, although I know desktop appraisals are being done, in fact, the real estate agents who are doing that are in breach of the Act. So the actual physical inspection of the property has to be done on both the rental and the sales front by the real estate agent. On the tenant's side, the viewing of the property, there is no laws surrounding a prospective tenant not being able to sign a lease without physically looking at the property. When we're talking about properties being sight unseen, we are talking about the properties not being physically inspected, not that they've seen online virtually with photos and video. There is no requirement from a prospective tenant to actually physically inspect the property to be able to sign a lease. Now, industry practice is that most property managers will require, as a policy, this is just an office policy, for prospective tenants to physically view the property. Why is this so? Like, for example, we know short-term lettings are being booked online, sight unseen, and that's just a normal practice. So why estate agents still taking kind of the old-fashioned, stance on physical inspections is because tenants are entering into long-term contracts, okay, the lease. So from the property manager's point of view, not having a tenant actually walk through the property and then sign a lease and then pick up the keys, go to the property, and all of a sudden something happens at the property where the tenant's not happy with what they've actually signed up for, becomes a really tricky situation. They're either being let down by possibly a poor description of what the property was, or the photos were not up to scratch. They're 4 years old or 5 years old photos that the property is now very dated and tired and old looking. They're completely disappointed, or they completely don't like the neighborhood, or the house next to them, or the property across the road, or it's on a flight path. And so there's all sorts of variables that can actually go wrong with a sight unseen lease being signed. So it's consumer beware. It's consumer beware. They take on the risk if they're going to go down the path of booking or seeing a property online with a virtual tour or floor plans or photos, and then signing a lease, which is a binding contract. And the agents now have disclaimers and disclosures around applying for property, for tenants applying the property, that they accept that property in as is condition. There is now a workaround for the agents around that front, so it doesn't become a legal argy-bargy, but yet the industry still takes a stance of, you know what, either you physically inspect the property before you make a decision, or you send somebody else in on your behalf, whether it's a friend or a relative, a family member, to actually view the property before you make the final decision and sign the dotted line on a tenancy agreement. So you'll find it is possible, but it is risky, and of course it's caveat emptor. It's that buyer beware situation if you're going to do that. But there's nothing stopping you by law as a prospective tenant to sign a lease without physically seeing the property inside out.
Yeah, that sounds all pretty legit to me. So from my perspective, from the buyer's side, of course, I think this is really topical at the moment, given what's happening in Australia. So more and more where, we can't move around. So we have to, if we're going to buy, outside of our area, we have to either buy it sight unseen or have someone look at a property for us. But COVID or no COVID, pretty much 99% of my clients would buy without actually seeing the property themselves. So they go through quite a few different phases, but these days we have lots of good free information that you can use to filter out a property. And, we're all in the industry, but if you're not buying all the time, you do need to know that you can use the two main portals of realestate.com.au or domain.com.au. I'm speaking to people every day who don't even know these sites exist. It's unbelievable. But anyway, so you can use these portals to really interrogate the property and look for features that are important to you. And those portals now usually have historical photos if the agent is doing the right thing and taking new photos every time the property is put up for sale. But, it is a little bit of human intervention there. So you can't rely on it, 100%, but these portals are getting better and better. What I always say to people is to be aware of this kind of thing, where you've got photos that just don't look right. Always marry up any photos with a floor plan, if there's a floor plan there, and understand the perspective that the photos were taken from. Some agents now in their sales shots are using computer-generated furniture. Have you seen that, either of you?
Yes, virtual furnishings. Yeah.
Yeah. And an inexperienced buyer, they become interested in a property because of the furniture. So you have to be very, very careful about that. So use the tools you've got online. The other thing I would say is use Google Maps as much as you possibly can. And you have to use both views, the satellite view and the normal view, whatever that's called. This is an actual example of a classic way to get stuck. So on Google Maps, sort of normal map view, like in this map view, then I'm not sure, can either of you see what I've got circled in red there?
Yes.
Yep.
So do you know what it is? Transmission lines. And so the property in question that I was actually looking at was this one here. And so you kind of go, unless you actually zoom right in, you can't actually see. And then going to the property. So these were the sales shots, and this was looking the other way. So it's really just a matter of being careful. So I say to people who are trying to buy in a new area, do as much due diligence as you can online. Also, of course, asking for any assistance from the agent, but it's not their job to do your due diligence. They are selling the property and they're representing the seller. That the top 5 things that we would use to eliminate a property before I'd even go out and see it are looking for overhead electricity, transmission lines, rail either being too close or not close enough. Then busy roads, you're always going to have problems with properties on busy roads, mountains or block slopes. So a lot of people now look for the size of the block before they'll put a property on their list or before they will knock it off. And this is a good example of a property that looked like it was on about 1,000 square meters, but about 60% of the property was like mountain. So you've got to be careful of that. And also, yeah, check things out for transport. But really, in this day and age, we've got the tools to check things out and buy, outside of our area. But it is better to have an independent person. If you can't go to the property, have an independent person other than the agent go and walk through the property and look around the outside of the property for you. But in the COVID age, the agents are adapting. And so what you can do, because we have to book in 15-minute appointments now to view a property, you can use that time to walk through a property on the phone with the agent showing you what they can see. And you can say to them, can you, show me the foundations, show me what's around the property. I mean, would I recommend it? Obviously, what we can do for our clients is so much more, because we'll have every property, no matter where it is in Australia, we have someone walk over it. But yeah, a tip if you want to, try and do it yourself is to see if the agents will walk you through a property themselves. And then once you've got an agreement, if you're happy with the property, remember you must always do a building and pest inspection on the property, because it's a very expensive purchase and you don't want to get stuck. Any other comments on that? No?
No, that's all straightforward, Deborah. So yeah, so it's a little bit tricky to maneuver through a purchase without a physical inspection, but it's not impossible, and the risks can be mitigated.
Yeah. As an individual, you don't personally have to see it, but it's better if you have someone you trust.
Yes.
Walk across the property
to do a walkthrough, an independent walkthrough. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. I guess that's it from us today. So thanks very much for watching. We'd love to receive your feedback. We can be reached via our own sites. So Ken at avvora.com.au, John at realpropertymanager.com.au, or me at propertyfrontline.com.au. That's it. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.